Pastor Dwayne was a beacon of light in the small town of Harmony Creek. His church, the First Baptist Church of Harmony Creek, stood proudly on Main Street, its white steeple piercing the clear blue sky. For over a decade, Dwayne had led his flock with a gentle hand and a booming voice, preaching messages of love, forgiveness, and community. He was more than just a pastor. He was a pillar, a friend, and a confidant to many. His sermons were always well attended, filled with uplifting stories and practical advice for navigating life's challenges. He had a knack for making everyone feel welcome, regardless of their background or struggles. The church thrived under his leadership, growing in numbers and expanding its outreach programs to help those in need. Dwayne was seen as a man of unwavering faith and impeccable character. But beneath the surface of this idyllic picture, a darkness lurked. A secret that threatened to shatter the carefully constructed image of Pastor Dwayne and send shockwaves through the entire community. A secret involving whispered phone calls, clandestine meetings, and a promise made to another woman. A promise he couldn't keep. A secret that would ultimately lead to a day of unimaginable horror, a day that would forever be etched in the memories of everyone present. A day of betrayal, a day of reckoning, a day when the sanctity of marriage and the house of God would be violated in the most shocking way imaginable. The joyous occasion of a wedding would soon turn into a scene of chaos and despair, revealing the hidden sins of a man who was supposed to be a symbol of virtue. The whispers would soon turn to shouts. The secrets would soon be revealed. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for a celebration of love. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the First Baptist Church, casting colorful patterns on the polished wooden floors. Excitement buzzed in the air as guests began to arrive, dressed in their finest clothes, their faces beaming with anticipation. Sarah, the bride, was a vision of beauty in her white lace gown. Her smile radiated happiness as she prepared to walk down the aisle and begin her new life with Dwayne. Her bridesmaids, adorned in soft pastel dresses, fluttered around her, offering words of encouragement and last-minute adjustments to her veil. Sarah had waited a long time for this day, and she couldn't imagine a more perfect setting or a more perfect partner. The church was overflowing with well-wishers. Families, friends, and members of the congregation filled the pews, eager to witness the union of Dwayne and Sarah. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and roses, carefully arranged on the altar. The organist played softly, creating a serene and joyful atmosphere. Everything was in place for a beautiful and memorable ceremony. But beneath the surface of this apparent bliss, a storm was brewing. Unbeknownst to Sarah and the assembled guests, a shadow was approaching, a force that would shatter the peace and tranquility of the moment. As Dwayne stood at the altar, awaiting his bride, a sense of unease began to creep into the air, a feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The happy chatter of the guests seemed to fade into a muffled hum, and a palpable tension began to fill the room. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything. The joyous occasion was about to transform into a nightmare. Just as Sarah began her walk down the aisle, a figure burst through the heavy oak doors at the back of the church. All heads turned in unison. It was a woman, her face contorted with rage, her eyes burning with fury. She wore a simple dress, a stark contrast to the elegant attire of the wedding guests. Her voice, raw and filled with pain, cut through the soft music like a knife. "Dwayne," she screamed, her voice echoing through the silent church. "You can't do this. You promised me." Sarah froze, her smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion and disbelief. Dwayne's face paled. He knew that voice. He knew exactly who it was. His carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down around him. The woman, Letitia, began to stride purposefully down the aisle, her eyes fixed on Dwayne. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Whispers erupted as people tried to make sense of what was happening. Who was this woman? What did she mean by "you promised me"? "Dwayne, how could you?" Letitia cried, her voice trembling with emotion. "After everything we've been through, after our child." The word child hung in the air like a heavy weight. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. The bridesmaids gasped. The parents of the bride exchanged worried glances. The joyous atmosphere had completely evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of dread. Dwayne tried to speak, to explain, but no words would come. He was paralyzed by fear and guilt. He knew that he had made a terrible mistake, a mistake that was now playing out in the most public and humiliating way possible. Letitia continued her advance, her anger growing with each step. The tension in the church was almost unbearable. Everyone knew that this was not just a simple interruption. This was a confrontation with the potential for devastating consequences. The secrets were out. The reckoning had begun. To understand Letitia's rage, we must rewind the clock, back to a time before Sarah, before the wedding plans, before the picture-perfect facade of Pastor Dwayne. It began 2 years earlier at a church picnic. Letitia, a young, vibrant member of the congregation, caught Dwayne's eye. He was drawn to her warmth, her laughter, and her genuine spirit. Their initial conversations were innocent enough, filled with discussions about faith and community service. But soon, those conversations deepened, becoming more personal, more intimate. Dwayne found himself confiding in Letitia, sharing his doubts and insecurities, things he couldn't share with anyone else. Letitia, in turn, was captivated by Dwayne's charisma and his apparent vulnerability. An affair began, fueled by secret rendezvous and stolen moments. Dwayne showered Letitia with attention and affection, promising her a future together. He spoke of leaving his wife, of starting a new life with Letitia and their unborn child. He painted a picture of a happy family, a dream that Letitia desperately wanted to believe. When Letitia discovered she was pregnant, Dwayne initially seemed overjoyed. He vowed to support her and their child, promising to always be there for them. But as the pregnancy progressed, Dwayne's behavior began to change. He became distant, evasive, and increasingly preoccupied. The whispered phone calls became less frequent. The secret meetings stopped altogether. Then came the bombshell. Dwayne announced his engagement to Sarah. Letitia was devastated. She confronted Dwayne, demanding an explanation. He offered only weak excuses and empty apologies. He claimed that he couldn't leave his wife, that it was too complicated, that he had a responsibility to the church. He begged Letitia to keep their affairs secret, promising to provide for her and their child financially. But Letitia knew that money wasn't enough. She wanted a family, a future, a life with the man she loved. And now, that dream was being ripped away from her, replaced by a crushing sense of betrayal. The depth of Dwayne's deception was only now coming to light. Dwayne wasn't simply unfaithful. He was a master manipulator. He skillfully compartmentalized his life, maintaining a pristine public image while engaging in a secret affair. He used his position of power within the church to his advantage, preying on Letitia's vulnerability and her admiration for him. He would preach about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of family values on Sundays, while simultaneously whispering sweet nothings into Letitia's ear during the week. He played the role of the devoted pastor to his congregation, the loving husband to his wife at the time, and the doting father-to-be to Letitia. It was a complex web of lies and deceit, carefully constructed to protect his reputation and maintain his control. Even after announcing his engagement to Sarah, Dwayne continued to string Letitia along, offering her just enough hope to keep her from exposing his secret. He would send her occasional text messages, telling her that he still cared for her, that he was trapped in a difficult situation, and that he would find a way to make things right. These crumbs of affection were enough to keep Letitia clinging to the hope that he would eventually choose her. He used guilt as a weapon, reminding Letitia of the sacrifices he was making for her and their child, subtly implying that she owed him her silence. He portrayed himself as a victim of circumstance, a man torn between two worlds, unable to choose between his duty and his heart. This manipulation allowed him to maintain control over Letitia, preventing her from revealing his secret and jeopardizing his carefully crafted facade. It was a calculated and cruel game, one that would ultimately have devastating consequences for everyone involved. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, using his charm and charisma to mask his true intentions. He was a betrayer of faith, a liar, and a manipulator of the highest order. Letitia's life after the birth of her child was a constant struggle. Dwayne provided some financial support, but it was never enough to cover all the expenses. She worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet, all while caring for her young child. The emotional toll was even greater. She felt isolated and alone, abandoned by the man she loved, and judged by a community that knew nothing of her struggles. Dwayne's promises of a future together rang hollow in her ears. She watched as he continued to thrive in his role as pastor, basking in the adoration of his congregation, while she struggled to keep her head above water. The injustice of it all was almost unbearable. She tried to move on, to find happiness in her new role as a mother. But Dwayne's presence loomed over her life, a constant reminder of what she had lost. The wedding announcement was the final straw. It was a public declaration of Dwayne's betrayal, a slap in the face to Letitia and her child. It was a clear message that he had chosen his reputation and his comfortable life over his promises to her. The weight of her financial struggles, the emotional distress of being a single mother, and the crushing realization that Dwayne would never be the man she thought he was all combined to push Letitia to her breaking point. She felt trapped with no way out. Her desperation grew with each passing day, fueled by a burning desire for justice and a desperate need to protect her child. She felt that Dwayne had not only betrayed her, but also their child, robbing them of a father and a stable future. It was this sense of injustice, this feeling of being utterly abandoned, that ultimately led Letitia to take the drastic action she did. She saw no other way to make Dwayne accountable for his actions, to make him understand the pain and suffering he had caused. The air in the church was thick with tension. Letitia stood just a few feet from Dwayne, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger, pain, and desperation. Sarah, still frozen in the aisle, watched in horror as the scene unfolded before her. The wedding guests gasped and whispered, unsure what to do. "You promised me a life, Dwayne," Letitia cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "You promised our child a father. You lied to me. You lied to everyone." Dwayne remained silent, his face pale and drawn. He knew that there was nothing he could say to justify his actions. He had betrayed Letitia, Sarah, and everyone who had ever trusted him. Suddenly, Letitia reached into her purse. A collective gasp swept through the church as she pulled out a small, silver handgun. The joyous occasion had reached its horrifying climax. "This is for my child, Dwayne," she screamed, her voice filled with anguish. "This is for all the lies. This is for the life you stole from me." Without another word, she raised the gun and fired. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the church, shattering the stained glass windows and piercing the hearts of everyone present. Screams erupted as people dove for cover, scrambling under pews and behind chairs. Sarah collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Dwayne clutched his chest, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He stumbled backward, his legs giving way beneath him. He fell to the ground, his white shirt stained crimson with blood. The perfect wedding day had turned into a scene of unimaginable horror. The house of God had become a place of violence and despair. The secrets had been revealed, and the consequences were devastating. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and the sounds of weeping and wailing. The silence that followed the gunshot was even more deafening. It was a silence that would haunt the town of Harmony Creek for years to come. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, pandemonium reigned. Some guests remained frozen in place, their faces etched with disbelief and terror. Others screamed and sobbed, clinging to loved ones for comfort. Children cried out for their parents, their innocent eyes witnessing a scene that would forever be etched in their memories. Several brave individuals rushed to Dwayne's side, attempting to provide first aid. They frantically applied pressure to his wound, trying to stem the flow of blood. Others called 911, their voices trembling as they relayed the horrifying events to the emergency dispatcher. Sarah, still on the floor, was inconsolable. Her wedding dress, once a symbol of hope and happiness, was now stained with tears and dirt. Her dreams of a perfect future with Dwayne had been shattered in an instant. Her family surrounded her, offering words of comfort, but nothing could ease her pain. Letitia stood motionless, the gun still clutched in her hand. She stared blankly at Dwayne's fallen body, her face devoid of emotion. The weight of her actions seemed to have finally hit her, and she appeared to be in a state of shock. Within minutes, the church was swarming with police officers and paramedics. The wounded were quickly attended to, and the area was secured. The once sacred space was now a crime scene, marked with yellow tape and filled with the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. The parishioners who had come to witness a joyous union were now witnesses to a tragedy. Their faith had been shaken, their sense of security shattered. The town of Harmony Creek would never be the same. The idyllic facade had been ripped away, revealing the dark secrets and hidden sins that had been lurking beneath the surface. The healing process would be long and arduous, and the scars of that day would remain for years to come. The sound of the gunshot would echo in their memories, a constant reminder of the day their pastor was shot at the altar. As sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second, police officers began to take control of the chaotic scene. They carefully ushered the wedding guests out of the church, one by one, guiding them past the yellow crime scene tape and into the waiting arms of counselors and support staff. Each person was a potential witness, their memories of the day crucial to the unfolding investigation. Paramedics worked feverishly to stabilize Dwayne before transporting him to the nearest hospital. His condition was critical, and his chances of survival were uncertain. The paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher and rushed him into the back of an ambulance, its flashing lights cutting through the somber atmosphere. Sarah, still reeling from the shock of what had transpired, was gently led away by her parents. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes vacant. The devastation was clear. Her wedding day, the day she had dreamed of her entire life, had been transformed into a living nightmare. The congregation stood outside the church, huddled together in small groups, their faces etched with grief and confusion. Their pastor, their leader, their friend, had been the victim of a violent crime. Their faith, once unwavering, had been shaken to its core. How could something like this happen in their house of worship? How could someone they had trusted and admired be capable of such deception? The media began to arrive, their cameras flashing, their reporters scribbling notes. The story of the pastor who was shot at the altar by his baby mama was sure to make headlines across the country. The town of Harmony Creek was about to be thrust into the national spotlight, its secrets exposed for all the world to see. The once peaceful community was now a scene of chaos and sorrow, forever marked by the events of that tragic day. The weight of what had happened pressed down on them all, a heavy burden of grief, disbelief, and uncertainty. Letitia was taken into custody without resistance. She was led away from the church in handcuffs, her head bowed in shame and regret. The media swarmed around her, their cameras flashing, their reporters shouting questions, but she remained silent, her eyes fixed on the ground. At the police station, Letitia was read her Miranda rights and then subjected to a lengthy interrogation. Initially, she was hesitant to speak, overwhelmed by the gravity of her actions. But as the detectives presented her with the evidence, eyewitness accounts, forensic findings, and Dwayne's own medical records, she began to open up, revealing the full extent of her relationship with Dwayne and the events that had led to the shooting. She spoke of the broken promises, the financial struggles, the emotional distress, and the feeling of being abandoned and betrayed. She explained that she had not intended to kill Dwayne, but that she had simply wanted to confront him, to make him understand the pain he had caused. She claimed that the shooting was a moment of madness, a desperate act of revenge fueled by years of pent-up anger and resentment. The detectives listened intently, piecing together the puzzle of Dwayne's secret life. They interviewed Sarah, members of the congregation, and other individuals who had knowledge of Dwayne and Letitia's affair. As the investigation unfolded, A picture emerged of a man who had lived a double life, deceiving everyone around him in order to protect his reputation and maintain his position of power. The investigation also revealed that Letitia had purchased the handgun. The trial of Letitia Johnson became a media circus, drawing national attention and further dividing the community of Harmony Creek. The prosecution argued that Letitia's actions were premeditated and malicious, driven by jealousy and a desire for revenge. They presented evidence of the handgun purchase, Letitia's angry text messages to Dwayne, and eyewitness testimony from wedding guests who described her demeanor in the moments leading up to the shooting. The defense team, led by a seasoned attorney, argued that Letitia was a victim of Dwayne's manipulation and deceit, a woman driven to the edge by years of emotional abuse and financial hardship. They portrayed her as a loving mother who had been abandoned and betrayed, a woman who had snapped under the weight of unbearable pressure. Sarah took the stand, her testimony filled with raw emotion. She spoke of her love for Dwayne, her shattered dreams, and the pain of learning about his affair. She also expressed sympathy for Letitia, acknowledging the difficult circumstances she had faced. Other witnesses included members of the congregation, who offered conflicting accounts of Dwayne's character. Some described him as a compassionate and devoted pastor, while others revealed their suspicions about his secret life. Letitia herself testified, her voice trembling as she recounted her relationship with Dwayne, her broken promises, and her desperate attempt to confront him on his wedding day. She apologized for her actions, expressing remorse for the pain she had caused to Sarah, Dwayne, and the entire community. The closing arguments were passionate and compelling, each side painting a vivid picture of the events that had led to the shooting. The prosecution argued for a conviction on attempted murder charges, while the defense pleaded for leniency, arguing that Letitia's actions were the result of extreme emotional distress. The jury was left to grapple with the complex moral and legal questions at the heart of the case. The weight of their decision hung heavy in the courtroom. The scandal rocked Harmony Creek to its core. The community was deeply divided, torn between sympathy for Letitia and outrage over her violent actions. Some residents rallied around Letitia, organizing fundraisers to help pay for her legal defense and offering support to her and her child. They saw her as a victim of Dwayne's abuse, a woman who had been driven to the edge by his deceit and manipulation. Others condemned Letitia's actions, viewing her as a dangerous criminal who deserved to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. They argued that violence was never the answer and that she had no right to take the law into her own hands. They expressed outrage over the fact that she had brought a gun into their church, a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary of peace and safety. The First Baptist Church of Harmony Creek suffered a devastating blow. Attendance plummeted and donations dried up. Many members left the church altogether, unable to reconcile their faith with the shocking events that had taken place within its walls. The church leadership struggled to maintain order and restore trust within the congregation. They organized counseling sessions, prayer meetings, and community forums in an effort to help people cope with the trauma and move forward. The scandal also had a profound impact on Sarah. She withdrew from public life, struggling to cope with the betrayal and the loss of her dreams. She eventually left Harmony Creek, seeking a fresh start in a new community. The town, once known for its harmony and neighborly spirit, was now fractured and scarred, struggling to heal from the wounds of betrayal and violence. The very foundation of their faith had been shaken. The future of the church and the community remained uncertain. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Letitia Johnson was found guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, but acquitted on a more serious charge of attempted murder. The verdict reflected the jury's recognition of the severity of Letitia's actions, as well as their understanding of the mitigating circumstances that had contributed to her state of mind. During the sentencing hearing, the judge considered a number of factors, including Letitia's lack of a prior criminal record, her history of abuse and manipulation by Dwayne, and the devastating impact that her actions had had on the community. The prosecution argued for a lengthy prison sentence, emphasizing the need to deter others from resorting to violence. The defense pleaded for leniency, arguing that Letitia was a loving mother who deserved a second chance. Ultimately, the judge sentenced Letitia to 10 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5. The sentence was met with mixed reactions from the community. Some felt that it was too lenient, given the seriousness of the crime. Others felt that it was too harsh, considering the circumstances. The verdict and sentencing brought a measure of closure to the legal proceedings, but they did little to heal the deep wounds that had been inflicted on Harmony Creek. The community remained divided, struggling to come to terms with the events that had transpired. The case of Letitia Johnson and Pastor Dwayne serve as a stark reminder of the destructive power of betrayal, the complexities of human relationships, and the enduring challenges of seeking justice in a world filled with moral ambiguity. The sentencing was a step, but the journey to healing would be long. The impact on Letitia's child remained a looming question. Dwayne survived the shooting, but his reputation was irrevocably tarnished. He was stripped of his pastoral duties and ostracized by many in the community. He eventually moved away from Harmony Creek, seeking anonymity and a chance to rebuild his life. However, the scars of his past continued to haunt him, and he struggled to find peace. Sarah never remarried. The betrayal she experienced on her wedding day left her deeply scarred, making it difficult for her to trust again. She dedicated her life to helping others, working as a counselor for victims of domestic violence. She found solace in her work, using her own experiences to guide and support those who had suffered similar traumas. Letitia's child was raised by her sister, who provided a loving and stable home. The child grew up knowing about the circumstances of her birth and her mother's actions. While it was difficult, her aunt always spoke of Letitia with love, never wanting her to grow up resenting her mother. Upon Letitia's release from prison, she worked hard to reestablish a relationship with her child. The road was not easy, but they persevered, both determined to heal and move forward. The First Baptist Church of Harmony Creek slowly began to recover. A new pastor was appointed, and efforts were made to rebuild trust and restore faith within the congregation. The church focused on community outreach programs and reconciliation efforts, seeking to heal the divisions that had been created by the scandal. While the church eventually regained some of its former glory, the memory of that fateful wedding day lingered, a reminder of the fragility of faith and the enduring power of forgiveness. The steeple still stood, but the foundation was forever altered. The story of Pastor Dwayne, Letitia, and Sarah is a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of betrayal, the fragility of faith, and the long and arduous path to forgiveness. It reminds us that even those who appear to be pillars of virtue can harbor dark secrets, and that choices, no matter how small they may seem at the time, can have profound and lasting repercussions. The tragedy in Harmony Creek forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, the capacity for both great love and unspeakable cruelty, the allure of temptation, and the destructive power of unchecked emotions. It raises questions about the nature of forgiveness, whether it is always possible, whether it is always deserved, and what it truly means to move forward after experiencing profound loss and betrayal. The story also highlights the importance of empathy and understanding. While Letitia's actions were undeniably wrong, her story serves as a reminder that even those who commit terrible acts are often driven by complex and deeply personal circumstances. It calls for us to look beyond the surface, to consider the factors that may have contributed to their choices, and to approach them with compassion rather than judgment. Ultimately, the tragedy in Harmony Creek is a reminder that life is complex and messy, that there are no easy answers, and that even in the darkest of times, there is always the potential for healing and redemption. It is a story that challenges us to examine our own lives, to reflect on our own choices, and to strive to live with greater honesty, integrity, and compassion. While the scars may never fully fade, the hope for a better future remains, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The echoes of that gunshot may still resonate, but the possibility of a new harmony endures.